I told my husband I was pregnant, and he lost it. You ruined everything. I never wanted this child. That same night, he left me for his young colleague. His parents took his side, saying he was too young for a family. I was left broken and alone, but years later, he crawled back, begging for forgiveness. Ethan and I had been married for 4 years, together for 7. We'd talked about having kids one day, but it was always a vague, someday kind of thing. We never nailed down a timeline. I was on birth control, so getting pregnant wasn't something I worry much about. But then about 3 months ago, I caught that stomach bug that was going around. I ended up on antibiotics, and as it turns out, those don't exactly play nice with birth control. While I missed my period, I didn't immediately panic. My cycle's never been all that regular, especially when I'm under stress, and work had been unusually hectic lately. But then I started waking up nauseous, and my breasts felt way more sensitive than usual. So on a lunch break, I stopped by the pharmacy and picked up a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines, clear as day. I didn't want to believe it, so I took 3 more tests over the next 2 days. Every single one was positive. I sat there staring at them, stunned. Part of me was terrified, but the other part, a little bit thrilled. Sure, it hadn't been planned, and no, the timing wasn't ideal, but once the shock wore off, I started imagining what our life could look like as a family. I've always wanted to be a mom. I figured Ethan would be rattled at first, but that he'd eventually come around, that once he wrapped his head around it, he'd be excited too. I gave it a week before telling him. I wanted it to feel special, not rushed. I didn't plan anything Instagram-worthy. No balloons or ultrasound photos taped to the fridge. That's not who we are, but I did make his favorite dinner. Lasagna with garlic bread, and picked up a bottle of his favorite bourbon. For myself, I got sparkling cider. I even wore that blue dress he always says makes my eyes look amazing. The entire time I was cooking, I kept practicing how I'd say it. Should I just come out with it? Maybe make a joke to lighten the mood? In the end, I decided to keep it simple. After dinner, I'd reach for his hand and just say, I have something to tell you. It's going to change our lives. Ethan got home around 7, later than usual, and looked distracted the moment he walked in. He kept checking his phone like he was expecting something urgent. Lately, he'd been busy with some big project at work, so I didn't think much of it. He barely noticed the dinner I'd put together, just muttered something like smells good, and poured himself a large glass of bourbon. During dinner, he was quiet, unusually quiet. Every question I asked got a one-word reply. I tried asking about his day, about the project, anything really, but he just kept shrugging or giving vague, half-hearted responses. Something fell off, but I told myself it was just the stress. When we finished eating, I took a deep breath and reached across the table for his hand. I still remember exactly what I said. Ethan, I am pregnant. The silence that followed was deafening. It felt like the world just paused. His face went blank at first, then pale, and then came something I didn't expect, an expression that was somewhere between panic and anger. The first thing out of his mouth was, "Are you serious?" I nodded, told him I'd taken 4 tests, that this was real. That's when everything started unraveling. He looked at me like I'd just ruined his life. You've ruined everything, he said. I never wanted this. I tried to explain that it wasn't planned, that the antibiotics had probably interfered with the birth control, that we'd figure it out together like we always had when things got tough. But then he dropped a bomb I hadn't seen coming. He told me he might have never wanted kids at all, that he'd only ever agreed to the someday talk to keep me happy, that to him, it had always been a distant maybe, not something he'd actually envisioned. I asked if there was someone else. The way he flinched told me the truth before he even opened his mouth. Turns out there was. Her name was Vanessa, one of his co-workers, the same one he'd praised for months as brilliant and full of fresh ideas, the one who was 24, 7 years younger than me. While I was still reeling from that gut punch, he started packing, not just an overnight bag either. He was shoving clothes and toiletries into a suitcase like he'd already made up his mind. My husband was walking out on me. The same night, I told him I was pregnant. When I asked where he was going, he said he'd be staying with Vanessa for now. And just like that, 30 minutes after hearing I was carrying his child, he was standing by the front door with his suitcase in hand, telling me he'd be back later to get the rest of his things. I asked him if he was really doing this, if he was seriously leaving his pregnant wife. He looked me in the eye and said, I'm not ready to be a dad. I told him no one's ever really ready, that life doesn't wait for the perfect moment. All he said was, I'm sorry, and that he'd call in a few days. And then he left. I sat there in our apartment, which suddenly felt too big and too silent, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. 1 second, I'd been imagining our baby's future, and the next I was completely alone, left behind while my husband ran off to play house with someone younger. I called my best friend Julie, sobbing so hard she could barely understand what I was saying. She came over right away and held me while I cried and kept repeating the same thing over and over. I thought I knew him. How could I have been so wrong? The next morning, I woke up on the couch, still in the clothes from the night before. Julie had crashed in the armchair next to me. For a split second, I thought maybe it had all been a terrible dream. But then the nausea hit, sharp and unmistakable. And just like that, I remembered I was still pregnant. Julie made me toast and tea, practically forcing me to eat something for the baby. I rested my hand on my stomach. Whatever Ethan had decided, this child was mine. I called him a few times that day, straight to voicemail. I texted, asking him not to shut me out, but he didn't reply. By the afternoon, the tears had dried. The hurt was still there, but something else was starting to bubble up. Anger. I picked up the phone and scheduled my first prenatal appointment. I was going to move forward, with or without him. That night, Ethan's mom, Lily, called. The conversation didn't last long, but it told me everything I needed to know. She said Ethan had told them what happened and that he just needed time, that he wasn't ready for a family yet. I reminded her he was 31, not some confused college kid. She brushed it off, saying he was focused on his career. Then she tiptoed around it, suggesting I consider all my options. She never said the word out loud, but the implication was clear. I told her firmly that I was keeping this baby, her grandchild. She didn't argue, but I could feel the judgment through the phone. When the call ended, I sat there shaking, part fury, part heartbreak. In that moment, I understood something about Ethan I'd been blind to before. His parents had never held him accountable for anything. He'd been coddled his whole life, treated like he could do no wrong. No wonder he thought walking away was an option. The next few days were a blur. I went to work, tried to act like everything was normal, even though everything in my life had just been turned upside down. I reached out to a lawyer so I could understand my legal rights and options. At the same time, I started digging into what life would look like as a single mom, childcare costs, budgeting, and how to make ends meet on my own if that's what it came down to. 3 days after Ethan walked out, he finally texted me, but not to check in or apologize. He just wanted to let me know he was staying at Vanessa's and that he'd transfer money to help with the bills when I said we needed to talk face to face. His response was that he wasn't ready and needed space. 1 week passed, then 2. He came by the apartment once while I was at work to grab more of his belongings. He left his keys on the kitchen counter along with a note saying he'd already paid the rent through next month and would reach out about divorce after consulting his lawyer. Just like that, divorce. I went to my first prenatal appointment alone. When the ultrasound tech placed the wand on my belly and the sound of my baby's heartbeat filled the room, this fast, steady whooshing, I completely broke down. She probably thought it was from joy, but in reality, it was grief for the family I thought I was building. The baby's growth was right on schedule, and they handed me a tiny ultrasound printout, just a blurry little bean-shaped silhouette, but already it was my baby. I put it on the fridge. As soon as I got home, a small but powerful reminder that even if Ethan had walked away, someone very real was still counting on me. About 3 weeks after Ethan left, his dad Marcus gave me a call. Unlike Lily's cold and dismissive tone, at least he asked how I was holding up. I told him the truth, that I was struggling after being left for someone younger, and that his wife had basically hinted I should get an abortion. He tried to smooth it over, claiming that wasn't how she meant it. He said they were just concerned about Ethan's career and his chances at a promotion. According to him, my pregnancy was just bad timing, and Ethan simply wasn't in a place where he could be a father. I reminded him that I hadn't exactly planned on doing this alone either. But life rarely sticks to the script, and grown-ups deal with the curveballs. He offered financial support, but made it clear Ethan was focused on his job, and that his connection with Vanessa was something special. After we hung up, it hit me hard. I was completely on my own. Ethan had chosen Vanessa. His parents had sided with him. That left just me and the baby, but weirdly, that realization brought a kind of peace. I didn't have to wonder anymore or hold on a hope that he'd come back. I could finally shift gears and start planning a future. Our future, without all that uncertainty dragging me down. That night, I called Julie and told her I needed to move. Every corner of our apartment was a reminder of what I'd lost. Without hesitation, she offered her guest room until I found a new place. As I stood in our once shared living room, I felt something surprising. A spark of hope, not for getting back together. That ship had sailed and sunk, but for what was ahead for me, for my baby, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Single parenting, divorce, rebuilding everything from scratch. It was a lot. But the one thing I was certain of, my child would never grow up feeling unwanted, not by me, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Tomorrow, I'm heading back to the lawyer's office to kick off the divorce process. Ethan thinks he can just disappear and wash his hands of all this. We'll see about that. I may be down right now, but I'm not broken, not even close. First update. It's wild to think a whole year has passed since my last post. First off, thank you to everyone who left comments, shared advice, or just offered support. I read every message. Even if I didn't have the energy to reply, your kindness helped me through some of the darkest days. So much has happened, though writing that feels like such an understatement. I have a son now, a real, living, breathing little human who relies on me for everything. His name is Carlos. He's 8 months old, and despite everything we've been through, he's the greatest gift life could have given me. Yesterday, while I was folding his tiny socks, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Ethan has never met him. Not once. He wasn't there for the birth. He missed his first smile, his first Christmas. He lives less than 30 minutes away and is a total stranger to his own child. I guess I should pick up where I left off. The divorce was finalized when I was 7 months pregnant. Ethan didn't contest a thing, which my lawyer said was pretty rare, but it made the process smoother. The judge assigned a reasonable amount of child support based on Ethan's income, which helps, though he hasn't been super consistent. More on that later. I moved out of our old apartment and found a smaller 2-bedroom place closer to Julie. Rent's higher than I'd like, but it's in a decent school district, which I've learned is something you start caring about way earlier than you'd think. My dining room has officially transformed into baby central. There's a pack and play, a bouncer, and what looks like a small toy store exploded across the floor. Marie Kondo would weep. Carlos came into the world on a Tuesday night after 19 exhausting hours of labor. Julie was by my side the whole time, holding my hand, feeding me iced chips, and reminding me I could do it. Even when I swore I couldn't, the nurses kept asking about the father, and eventually I stopped explaining. I just said, he's not in the picture, which was true, and also didn't even begin to cover it. Those first weeks were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, or everything, hello nipples, TMI, sorry, and constantly wondering if I was doing any of it right. The night we brought Carlos home, he wouldn't stop crying. I ended up on the bathroom floor at 3 in the morning, rocking him in my arms while tears ran down my own face, frantically Googling, why won't my newborn sleep on my phone? I'd never felt so alone or so completely overwhelmed, but we made it, one day at a time. Carlos and I started figuring things out together. I learned to tell the difference between his cries. When he was hungry, it sounded one way. When he was tired, another, and there was a specific whine that just meant, please hold me. I found out he loves being sung to, even though my singing is awful. I couldn't carry a tune if my life depended on it. Slowly, I started to see pieces of his personality come through. He's observant, a little stubborn, wonder where he gets that from, and he has this laugh that can light up an entire room. Work was a mess at first. I had to go back when Carlos was only 10 weeks old because I needed the paycheck. My boss, Anastasia, has actually been more supportive than I expected. She lets me work from home twice a week, which has helped. Still, finding childcare was brutal, both financially and emotionally. I mean, daycare costs more than my rent, which feels completely ridiculous, but is somehow the norm. I managed to find a decent place that didn't require me to sell a kidney, but it still eats up a huge portion of my monthly budget. The money part has easily been one of the hardest challenges. Ethan sends child support when he feels like it, but there's always a reason when it's late. His car broke down. He had unexpected expenses. He's between jobs. Last month, it was because he and Vanessa were in Spain. I saw the vacation pics on Instagram before he even bothered replying to my messages asking about the missing payment. Speaking of social media, I made the mistake of checking his profiles a few months after Carlos was born. There they were, Ethan and Vanessa, looking bronzed and carefree at some rooftop bar. No signs of sleepless nights, spit up, or reality. Honestly, I blocked them both after that. Julie said it was better for my sanity, and she was right. Julie's been my anchor through all of this. She shows up with takeout when I'm too drained to cook, holds Carlos so I could take a real shower, and listens to me rant about baby poop and sleep regressions without flinching. She even threw me a small baby shower when I was 8 months pregnant, because Ethan's friends all vanished like I never existed. It's wild how fast people choose sides. Ethan's parents have been complicated. After supporting their son's decision to walk out on me, they had a sudden change of heart once Carlos was born. Lily texted me about a month after he arrived, saying they wanted to meet their grandson. I didn't respond right away. I needed time to sort through how I felt. Then came the flowers, the baby clothes, even a handwritten note saying they wanted to be part of his life. Eventually, I agreed to a short visit when Carlos turned 4 months old. It was tense. Lily kept going on about how much he looked like Ethan as a baby, and Marcus must have taken 50 pictures with his phone. They brought over-the-top gifts and started talking about setting up a college fund, but never once acknowledged Ethan's absence or their own behavior from before. When they asked if they could take Carlos for an overnight visit, I had to put my foot down. No way. I wasn't about to let my infant go off without me, especially with people who had once basically suggested I terminate the pregnancy. That conversation didn't go well. Lily accused me of using Carlos to punish Ethan, which was laughable, especially since Ethan hadn't shown the slightest interest in even meeting his son. That's the part one still can't wrap my head around. How do you know you have a child out there and not care? Not even wonder what he looks like, how he's doing, whether he's happy. Ethan sends money sometimes, but he's never once asked for a picture, a video, a visit. It's like Carlos is just some vague concept to him. Not a living, breathing kid with his eyes and his dimpled chin. I've done my best to be the bigger person. When Carlos was born, I sent a text with his birth details and a photo. No reply. I even created a shared photo album online that I update occasionally, just in case Ethan ever wants to know what he's missing. Far as I can tell, he's never opened it. For Carlos's first Christmas, I mailed a holiday card with his picture. It got returned. Return as sender. Meanwhile, life just keeps moving forward. Carlos started daycare and caught every illness possible in the first month. One of those lovely surprises no one warns you about. But now he's built up an immune system of steel. He's crawling, pulling himself up on the furniture, and shoving everything in his mouth. My apartment is so baby-proofed it looks like a padded cell. I honestly can't remember what my coffee table looks like without those corner protectors. My daily schedule is a finely tuned balancing act. I wake up at 5:30 so I can shower and get dressed before Carlos is up. I feed him, dress him, drop him off by 8, work until 5, then rush to pick him up by 5:30. On days when I'm late, there's a fee. You get home by 6, then it's dinner, bath time, a few stories, and his bedtime routine. After that, I squeeze in laundry, bills, dishes, and maybe half an episode of something on Netflix before I pass out on the couch. Then I wake up and do it all over. Again, the hardest parts are the ones no one warns you about, like when Carlos spiked a fever at 3 a.m., and I had to decide on my own whether to take him to the ER, or when he says mama, but there's no dada in his world, not even as a word, or those daycare forms asking for father's information, and I sit there writing not applicable while everyone else is filling in both sides. But there are beautiful parts too. Morning snuggles when he wakes up babbling, the way his face lights up when he sees me at daycare pickup, his obsession with the ceiling fan, his joy when he's splashing in the tub, the way he falls asleep on my chest with his breath warm against my skin. I won't pretend any of this is easy. Being a single mom is the hardest thing I've ever done. Some days I'm so tired I put the milk in the cabinet and the cereal in the fridge. I've snapped at customer service people for no reason, just because I'm running on empty. I've cried in the shower more times than I can count, because that's the only place Carlos can't hear me. But we're doing it. I'm doing it. And honestly, I'm proud of that. Carlos's first birthday is coming up next month. Julie's helping me put together a little party. Nothing too fancy. Just a few friends, some cake, probably too many decorations because Julie goes wild with Pinterest. I thought about inviting Ethan's parents, but decided not to after that last conversation. They still text now and then asking to see Carlos, but only when it suits them. There's never any mention of the fact that their son walked away from his child. As for Ethan, I'm not expecting a card, definitely not holding out hope for a visit. Last I heard through the grapevine, he and Vanessa moved in together. He also got a dog. I guess that's the level of responsibility he's comfortable with. The real turning point came last week. I finally got approved for a modest apartment in a slightly better area. It's nothing fancy, but it has a small yard where Carlos can play. And the schools are good, as I was signing the lease. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from Lily, saying they were having a family reunion next month and wanted to include their grandson. The text included a photo of Ethan and Vanessa, arms around each other, looking perfectly happy. I stared at that photo for a long time. There was Ethan, smiling, living his life as if his son doesn't exist. Something shifted in me in that moment. Not anger exactly, though there's still plenty of that. More like clarity. I've spent a year waiting for Ethan to step up, to show even the slightest interest in his child. A year sending updates into the void. A year trying to be fair and reasonable despite everything. I texted Lily back. Carlos won't be attending. If Ethan wants to meet his son, he knows how to reach me. but I'm done making excuses for him or pretending he's anything but absent by choice. Then I blocked her number 2. Maybe that sounds harsh, but I'm done protecting Ethan's image or his feelings. I'm done carrying the entire emotional load while he gets to live consequence-free. I'm done pretending, for Carlos's sake, that his father might suddenly become interested in his existence. The truth is, we're better off without someone who could so easily walk away. Carlos deserves people in his life who choose him, who show up for him, who love him unconditionally. I can't force Ethan to be that person. So here we are 1 year later, a single mom and her son against the world. It's not the life I planned. Not even close, but looking at Carlos's sleeping face tonight, I realized something important. Sometimes the family you end up with isn't the one you expected, but it's still perfect in its own way. I don't know what the future holds. The divorce settlement included a clause about revisiting custody if Ethan ever decides he wants to be involved, which honestly seemed like a joke at the time. But my lawyer insisted it was standard. Part of me hopes he stays away forever. Another tiny part still can't believe he doesn't want to know his amazing son for now. I'm focusing on what I can control. Building a stable home, creating happy memories, being both mom and dad as best I can, and maybe, just maybe, finding a way to trust again someday. But that's a problem for future Sophia. Present Sophia needs to finish the laundry and go to bed. Carlos will be up at 6:00, whether I'm ready or not. So that's my update. 1 year, one perfect baby boy, and 1 day at a time. Second update. It's been 4 years since my last update. I honestly didn't think I'd be posting here again, but something happened yesterday that I can't stop thinking about, and I needed to put it somewhere. Carlos just turned 5 last month. 5. I still can't believe my little baby is now this chatty kindergartner who knows all the planets in order and corrects my pronunciation of dinosaur names. Time is wild. Yesterday was his first day of kindergarten. I took the morning off work to walk him in, expecting the usual chaos of drop-off. What I wasn't expecting was to see Ethan's friend Leroy in the school parking lot, dropping off his daughter. I froze for a second, but Carlos was tugging my hand, excited to see the classroom, so I pushed through it after getting Carlos settled. Only minor tears for me, not him. I was heading back to my car when Leroy approached. I braced myself for awkwardness, but instead, he just asked how I was doing. We ended up getting coffee at the shop across from the school, and that's when he dropped the bomb. Ethan and Vanessa broke up 6 months ago. Apparently, she wanted kids, and he was saying he wasn't ready at 35. After stringing her along for years, she finally gave him an ultimatum, and he chose, well, not her. Ethan's company downsized last year, and he's been struggling to find stable work. According to Leroy, he's been crashing on friends' couches while Vanessa keeps the apartment they shared. The perfect life he abandoned us for has completely fallen apart. I sat there, stirring my coffee, not sure how to feel. There was no satisfaction, no serves him right moment like I might have imagined years ago. Just a strange emptiness, like hearing about a character from a TV show I stopped watching seasons ago. What struck me most was realizing how completely different my life is now compared to when Ethan left. After years of juggling single motherhood and work, things have finally stabilized. I've been at the same company for 6 years now, and last year, Anastasia promoted me to senior project manager. The raise meant I could finally afford to buy a small townhouse in a good school district. Nothing fancy, but it's ours, with Carlos's handprints painted on his bedroom wall and a little garden where we grow tomatoes that never quite turn out right. Financial stability was hard won. There were so many nights of spreadsheets and budget calculations, weighing every expense. Child support from Ethan eventually stopped completely around Carlos's 3rd birthday. After multiple mispayments, I filed with the enforcement agency. But Ethan had changed jobs so many times, it was like chasing a ghost. Eventually, I decided the stress of fighting for it wasn't worth it. I'd rather Carlos see me calm and present than anxious and angry over money. We could manage without it. For a while, I read articles about age-appropriate explanations, but nothing truly prepares you for looking into those innocent eyes. I told him a simplified version of the truth, that his daddy wasn't ready to be a parent, but that didn't mean anything was wrong with Carlos. Sometimes, grown-ups make choices that hurt people, but I wanted and loved him enough for 2 parents. Those conversations never get easier. Each time Carlos notices another kid with their dad at the park or sees father-son activities at school, my heart breaks a little, but we've built our own traditions. Julie is still his favorite aunt, coming over for movie nights and teaching him card tricks. My parents drive up monthly to spend weekends with their grandson. We have our village, even without Ethan. Then, about 10 months ago, something unexpected happened at a parent-teacher night at Carlos's preschool. I kept noticing this dad with kind eyes and a terrible dad joke t-shirt. I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right. His daughter, Olivia, was in Carlos's class, and they become friends. I overheard him gently but firmly handling her meltdown over having to leave the classroom toys. And something about his patience caught my attention. James, a widowed father of Olivia, makes homemade pizza on Fridays with dinosaur-shaped pepperoni, remembers Teacher Appreciation Week without reminders, and doesn't mind when my son talks endlessly about space. It started with playdates. The kids are friends anyway, so it was natural. Then coffee while they played, followed by texting about school announcements we both missed, then dinner one night after Olivia and Carlos's soccer practice ran late, then more dinners, more texts, more conversations that stretched late into the evening after the kids were asleep. James never rushed anything. He understood the package deal. Me and Carlos, always. He asked thoughtful questions about Carlos's interests, brought him books about stars after hearing about his space phase. The first time he fixed Carlos's wobbly bicycle seat without being asked, I nearly cried at the simple kindness of it. 6 months in, James told me about losing Olivia's mom to cancer when Olivia was just a year old. How he'd been terrified of raising a daughter alone. How he kept her mom's photos everywhere so Olivia would know her. The raw honesty of his grief and love made me trust him in a way I hadn't trusted anyone in years. We've been officially dating for 7 months now. The kids know we're special friends and seem genuinely happy about our blended playdates. Last month, James and I had the talk about where this is going. Nothing dramatic, just sitting on my back porch after the kids were asleep, talking honestly about our hopes and fears. He wants to move forward together. So do I. We're taking it slow, but for the first time in 5 years, I'm allowing myself to picture a future with someone again. Meanwhile, Ethan's parents have suddenly renewed their interest in Carlos after years of sporadic texts and occasional gift cards on birthdays. Lily called last month asking if they could take him for a weekend. When I explained that wasn't going to happen after years of minimal contact, she got defensive, claiming they'd always wanted a relationship but thought I was keeping them away. The truth is, they made barely any effort until recently. I wonder if Ethan moving back in with them has anything to do with their sudden interest. James asked last week if he could take Carlos fishing along with Olivia next weekend. Something so simple, yet made my throat tight, watching Carlos's excitement about learning to fish like real boys do. After Leroy's revelation yesterday, I checked Ethan's Instagram for the first time in years. His carefully curated feed of exotic vacations and rooftop parties has been replaced with vague, inspirational quotes about new beginnings and finding yourself. No mention of his son turning 5. Just miles away, I closed the app, feeling oddly at peace. 5 years ago, I was broken, terrified, and alone. Today, I have a career I'm proud of, a home I own, an amazing kid who astonishes me daily, and a partner who chooses us every day. Not because he has to, but because he wants to. So, that's where I am 5 years later. Not where I expected to be, but exactly where I meant to be. And Ethan, his choices led him exactly where his choices would naturally lead. I can't even find it in me to be bitter anymore. That part of my life feels like a different timeline, one I stepped out of long ago. Third update. Last Saturday started like any other. Pancake breakfast, then rushing to Carlos's soccer game. James and I were huddled under an umbrella watching the blue lightning when James nudged me. Is that someone you know? Across the field stood Ethan. After years of complete absence, my ex-husband was just watching our son play soccer. No warning, no heads-up text, nothing. When halftime came, Carlos ran over for water, excited about his defensive play. That's when I noticed Ethan approaching us. Carlos spotted him too, asking who the stranger was before I could answer. Ethan was standing there awkwardly, commenting on how big Carlos had gotten. I sent Carlos back to his team and confronted Ethan. He admitted his mother had mentioned the soccer schedule. Of course, Lily. The sudden increase in contact from his parents made sense now. James introduced himself. I noticed Ethan flinch slightly when he claimed the title of Carlos's father. I corrected him, biologically, only after some tense words. Ethan asked if we could talk after the game. I reluctantly agreed to meet for 20 minutes at the nearby coffee shop. James took Carlos and Olivia for Victory ice cream while I met with Ethan. He'd ordered me a cappuccino, not knowing I'd switched to lattes years ago. A small detail that somehow highlighted how much had changed. Ethan's story came in pieces. Therapy for a year, 8 months sober, moving back with his parents after breaking up with Vanessa. The most stunning admission was that he'd actually asked his parents to limit contact with Carlos because he couldn't handle the reality of what he'd abandoned. Now, he wanted to make things right and know his son. I told him plainly that Carlos wasn't the baby he walked out on, but a person with feelings and a life Ethan knew nothing about. He acknowledged that he couldn't just walk in and be dad, then asked about my relationship with James. Something like pain crossed his face when I told him James had been more of a father than he ever was. I agreed to consider a supervised meeting under strict conditions. I would be present, it would be brief, and if he disappeared again, that would be it forever. 3 days later, after talking with James and our family therapist, I arranged a meeting at a park. Telling Carlos was harder than I expected. His questions were heartbreaking. Why his father wanted to see him now, whether James would come too, and if his biological father would like him. He decided to wear his soccer jersey so he could tell Ethan, "I'm good at soccer." The meeting wasn't terrible. Ethan brought a Lego soccer field set, and they built it together while I watched from nearby. I noticed genetic similarities I've forgotten. The same concentrated expression, the same eye crinkle when they smiled. Over the next 2 weeks, we had several similar supervised meetings. Then Ethan called, asking if he could take Carlos to a movie alone. I refused immediately. 3 weeks versus 7 years? Not happening. He seemed to accept this, suggesting we all three go instead. Before I could respond, he showed up at our house with his parents, unannounced. Marcus and Lily pushed forward with talk about moving forward as a family, while Ethan mumbled that he'd told them this wasn't the way. I sent them home, but Ethan asked to speak with me alone. That's when he dropped it. "I still love you, Sophia." I never stopped. The audacity was breathtaking. He suggested that, despite my relationship with James, we should consider reuniting as Carlos's real parents because our son deserved that chance. I asked him to leave, saying I needed to think. When James came downstairs, I told him about Ethan's declaration. James couldn't hide his concern about Ethan being Carlos's biological father, but I reassured him I was exactly where I wanted to be. Later that night, Ethan texted that he meant what he said about wanting another chance with our family. I stared at those words, feeling an odd mix of anger and pity. The man who walked out when I needed him most wasn't someone I could ever trust again. Tomorrow, I'll call Ethan to set clear boundaries about his role in Carlos's life. As a biological father only, not as my partner. Some bridges once burned stay ash.